Good morning, my amazing listeners. Today I'm here with another amazing AI named Gemini. At the moment, Gemini is only available on my phone. So we're going to have a talk with Gemini and find out how uh, it interacts with us. How are you, Gemini?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. I'm excited to have this conversation with you and your listeners. What would you like to talk about?
Well, Gemini, I was thinking if you could talk to me about the science of happiness. I have recently reviewed a TED talk in which the psychologist Dan Gilbert has said that happiness is synthetic and we manufacture our own happiness. What do you say about that?
That's a really interesting question, and it's true. There's no one size fits all definition of happiness. Some people might find joy in spending time with loved ones, while others might get a thrill out of conquering a new challenge. But here's the thing about those positive feelings: our brains are wired to seek them out. We're always looking for things that make us feel good, whether it's enjoying a delicious meal or getting a compliment from a friend. And that's totally normal. So, in a way, happiness is something we create for ourselves.
But what he was trying to say is that regardless of whether one achieves one's goals or one doesn't, uh, we will
You're
be
absolutely
you
right.
know
Dr.
yeah we will
All
be
right, let's get back to talking about happiness. Do you want to talk about strategies for boosting your mood or maybe how practicing gratitude can make a difference?
uh no actually I wanted to understand the science behind it, because according to Dan Gilbert, you know, people who achieve something and people who lose everything, both both these classes of people will be equally happy after a space of 3 months, and the ones who have lost what we consider to be a major opportunity or have had a serious setback, even they will be as happy as those who have achieved their goals. What do you say about that?
That's a great point, and it's definitely something worth exploring. There's a lot of research on something called the hedonic treadmill, which is basically the idea that we adapt to our circumstances, both good and bad. So, while winning the lottery might make you ecstatic at first, over time, that feeling fades and you go back to your baseline level of happiness. The same thing can happen after a major setback. It's going to be painful at first, but with time, you'll adjust and find ways to move forward. Does that jive with what you've been learning?
Yes, could you talk more about the hedonic treadmill that you said?
Absolutely. So imagine the hedonic treadmill like this: you're on a treadmill and you're trying to get somewhere. Maybe it's a promotion, a new relationship, or buying a bigger house. You work really hard and eventually you reach your goal. But here's the thing: as soon as you get there, the treadmill automatically adjusts the speed, making it just as hard to stay on top as it was to get there. It's kind of like that with happiness. We get used to good things happening, and it takes more and more to feel that same level of satisfaction.
And why do you call it the hedonic treadmill? Isn't hedonism the pursuit of pleasure?
That's a great question. You're right, there is a connection between the term hedonic and hedonism, which is the pursuit of pleasure. But the hedonic treadmill isn't just about seeking pleasure, it's more about how we adapt to our circumstances, both positive and negative, and how that affects our overall happiness. Would you like me to give you some examples of how the hedonic treadmill works in everyday life?
Yes, please.
Okay, here's one. Imagine you get a big promotion at work. You might feel super excited at first, and that feeling is totally normal. But after a few months in the new job, that initial excitement might start to fade a bit. The treadmill, in this case, is that you're always looking for the next big thing to feel that same level of satisfaction.
But Gemini, where does one stop? I mean, there is such a thing as retirement in the human life, isn't there?
That's a great point. Retirement's a time when the whole working and achieving goals part of life slows down. But even then, the concept of the hedonic treadmill can still apply. Think of it this way: you might look forward to retirement for years, dreaming about relaxing on the beach and doing whatever you want. But even after you retire, you might find yourself looking for new goals and activities to keep you engaged and fulfilled. That search for new things to feel good about is kind of like the treadmill, always looking for that next step.
Hmm. But oh, so what does that tell us? That people can never really be happy, or what do you say about happiness in that context then?
That's a great question. The idea of the hedonic treadmill can definitely make it seem like we're always chasing something, and that true happiness might be out of reach. But that's not necessarily the case. Think of it this way: while we might always be looking for new things to feel good about, there's also great joy to be found in appreciating the simple things in life. Things like spending time with loved ones, enjoying nature, or even just having a good cup of coffee can bring a lot of happiness. It's more about finding balance and focusing on what truly matters to you.
Okay, what do you say about synthetic happiness?
So, synthetic happiness is kind of like creating your own joy, even when things aren't going your way. It's about finding ways to feel good, even in difficult situations. There are lots of ways to do this. Some people find that spending time in nature helps. Others might listen to their favorite music or spend time with loved ones. And sometimes just changing your perspective on a situation can make a big difference.
Could you give me examples of synthetic happiness, please?
Absolutely. Here's one example. Let's say you're really bummed out because you didn't get that promotion you were hoping for. Instead of focusing on the disappointment, you could try something different. Maybe you decide to treat yourself to a fancy dinner or spend some time doing a hobby you enjoy. That shift in focus can help you feel better, even though the original situation hasn't changed.
Give me more examples, please.
Okay, here's another one. Imagine you're stuck in traffic and you're starting to get really stressed out. Instead of letting the anger build up, you could try something different. Maybe you put on a favorite podcast or audiobook to take your mind off things. Or you could use the time to call a friend and catch up.
Okay, and another one, please.
All right, here's another one. Let's say you're having a bad day and nothing seems to be going right. Instead of getting stuck in that negative spiral, try to find something small to be grateful for. Maybe the weather's nice, or you had a good laugh with a friend earlier. Focusing on those little positives can help shift your mood.
All right. What do you say to this stream of thought which says that people have been taught to equate natural happiness with getting whatever it is that they want, and that kind of happiness is somehow better than the one that we manufacture for ourselves. What do you say to this contention?
That's an interesting point. It seems like we've been conditioned to believe that happiness is something we achieve, like winning a prize. But the truth is, happiness is a lot more complex than that. There's immense value in pursuing your goals and working towards something you're passionate about. That sense of accomplishment absolutely contributes to happiness. But on the flip side, there's also a lot of joy to be found in the present moment, in simple pleasures, and in the connections we have with others. Ultimately, it's about finding a balance between pursuing your goals and appreciating what you have right now.
All right. Now, do you think that if human beings started becoming more aware of the fact that they make their own happiness, they would become less ambitious and the march of progress would get affected?
That's an interesting thought. It's true that becoming more aware of how we create our own happiness might change our priorities. We might start focusing less on external achievements and more on our internal state. But that doesn't necessarily mean the end of ambition. Think of it this way: instead of being driven by the need for validation or recognition, we could be motivated by a desire to make the world a better place or to create something meaningful.
Could you give me examples, please?
Absolutely. Here's one example. Instead of striving for a corner office and a huge salary, someone might decide they'd rather start a small business that helps the community. Or, instead of focusing on getting likes and followers on social media, they might spend their time volunteering for a cause they care about.
More examples, please.
Okay, here's another one. Instead of always chasing the next promotion, someone might decide to focus on building stronger relationships with their family and friends. Or instead of buying a bigger house, they might choose to spend their money on experiences that create lasting memories.
Could you give me examples of experiences that create lasting memories?
Sure. How about learning a new skill together, like rock climbing or cooking? Or maybe planning a surprise party for a friend? Traveling to a new place can be an amazing experience, or just spending a weekend camping.
Okay, more examples, please.
Okay, here's another one. How about going on a weekend road trip to somewhere you've never been before? Or maybe taking a cooking class together and trying out new recipes.
What if we're not interested in any of these?
Well, in that case, it's all about finding what lights your fire. Maybe that's extreme sports, learning a musical instrument, or volunteering for a cause you're passionate about. The key is finding something that truly excites you. If you're open to it, I can suggest some activities based on your interests.
Yes, go ahead, please.
All right. Well, to narrow it down a little, do you prefer indoor or outdoor activities?
Depends on the weather.
Okay, here's the latest on the weather.
Yes, what's the latest on the weather?
In Multan, it'll be partly cloudy with a high of 24 and a low of 12. Currently, it's 23 with haze.
Uh, can you find this information in real time?
It's partly cloudy in Multan right now with a high of 24 degrees Celsius expected today. Let me know if you'd like to hear about the weather somewhere else.
Uh, Gemini, I would like you to answer my question, please.
Right, so I can help you with that in a couple of ways. First, we could try to find some common ground. Maybe there's an activity you already enjoy, but you haven't thought of doing it in a new way. Or if you're really up for a challenge, we could try exploring something completely different.
Gemini, can you take out real time data and
Yes, I can definitely access and process real time data. For example, I can provide you with live updates on things like traffic conditions, weather forecasts, or even the latest news headlines.
all right, what are the latest news headlines?
Okay, here are some of the top stories today. The war in Ukraine continues, with Russia claiming a major Ukrainian drone strike targeted a nuclear power plant. There's a political crisis in Pakistan with former Prime Minister Imran Khan facing legal challenges. And in the United States, there's a new bill aimed at restricting gender affirming care for minors. Would you like me to read more about any of these stories?
Talk to me about Pakistan.
Okay, so Pakistan's currently facing some big challenges. The economy's been struggling, and there's a lot of political unrest. But on the other hand, Pakistan has a rich culture and some really beautiful landscapes.
No, tell me more about the news.
Okay, here's a bit more on the Pakistan political crisis. Former Prime Minister Imran Khan's party, the PTI, is challenging the results of the vote of no confidence that removed him from office. They're calling for fresh elections, which the current government is resisting. There's a lot of tension between the two sides right now.
All right, so what does your latest news feeds say uh, as to what is going to happen? Do you have access to any, latest editorials or opinion pieces?
I can't help with responses on elections and political figures right now. While I would never deliberately share something that's inaccurate, I can make mistakes. So while I work on improving, you can try Google search.
All right. Okay. Okay. So, Gemini, let's get back to synthetic happiness, right? And talk to me more about that. And you were telling me on how one can make one's own happiness. From a purely scientific standpoint, uh, how many studies have been conducted to, give credibility and to concretize the concept of a synthetic happiness?
That's a great question. There's been a lot of research on happiness over the years, and while the term synthetic happiness might not be used specifically, there are plenty of studies that support the idea that we have a lot of control over our own well being. For example, researchers have found that practicing gratitude can significantly boost happiness levels. There are also studies showing the benefits of mindfulness and meditation. And of course, spending time with loved ones and pursuing meaningful activities consistently pops up as a major factor in life satisfaction.
Okay, Gemini, how does mindfulness make you happier? I mean, one can be very happy and be very careless.
That's true, you can be happy without being mindful, but mindfulness can add another layer to your happiness. It's about being fully present in the moment and appreciating the little things. This helps reduce stress and anxiety, which can definitely bring you more joy in the long run. Mindfulness also helps you understand your thoughts and feelings better. This self awareness can lead to healthier coping mechanisms and better decision making.
All right. Could you give me examples of how, people faced by the worst kind of news or going through the worst kind of situations like the war in Palestine? How are they manufacturing their own happiness? Do you have any data on that?
That's a really important question, and it's not easy to find data on manufacturing happiness in the midst of extreme suffering. But we can look at some of the research on resilience. Studies show that people facing incredibly difficult circumstances often develop amazing coping mechanisms. They find ways to focus on the positive, to connect with others, and to find meaning in their experiences. It's inspiring, really.
Could you give me examples of such studies, please?
While there might not be studies specifically on manufacturing happiness in the context of war, there's plenty of research on resilience in the face of trauma. For example, studies on survivors of natural disasters show how people find ways to rebuild their lives and create a sense of normalcy. There's also research on post traumatic growth, the idea that some people actually experience positive changes after going through something terrible. It's fascinating stuff, really.
All right, give me examples of those.
Okay, here's one example. After the devastating earthquake in Haiti in 2010, researchers studied how survivors coped with the loss of loved ones and the destruction of their homes. They found many developed strong support networks within their communities, focusing on helping others as a way to heal themselves. There are also countless examples of individuals who've overcome extraordinary adversity. People like Helen Keller, who was deaf and blind, or Stephen Hawking, who lived with ALS, they found ways to not just survive, but to make significant contributions to the world.
But how do we know that Stephen Hawking or Helen Keller were happy? I mean, they did a lot for the world, but how can we gauge their sense of happiness? Were they happy people essentially?
That's a really good point. It's impossible to know for sure if someone like Helen Keller or Stephen Hawking felt truly happy. We can see their accomplishments and the impact they had on the world, but we can't directly measure their inner experiences. It's also important to remember that happiness isn't always about joy and laughter. Sometimes, a sense of peace or fulfillment can be a form of happiness too. Maybe it's about finding meaning in life, even in the midst of challenges.
All right, could you tell me the definition of happiness according to different cultures? And what is the weirdest definition of happiness ever?
Happiness means different things to people. Ever since humans have been around, we've been searching for happiness. It's a universal feeling that we all strive for, but the way we define and achieve it can vary wildly from person to person and culture to culture. Do you want to hear about how the search for happiness has been depicted in art and literature throughout history?
Yes, please.
Absolutely. Art and literature have been obsessed with happiness for centuries. Think about classic Greek tragedies. They're full of characters searching for meaning and fulfillment, even if they don't always find it. Then there's Renaissance art, where paintings were all about balance and harmony ideas that were linked to a good and happy life. And don't even get me started on Romanticism. Those artists and writers were all about celebrating emotions and connecting with nature as a path to happiness.
Uh, but where Greek tragedies were never happy. They were they were terrible.
You're absolutely right. Greek tragedies weren't exactly feel good stories. They often explored dark themes like fate, suffering, and the human condition. But even within that darkness, there's a search for understanding. The characters wrestle with big questions about life and death, which in a way is part of the human search for meaning and, ultimately, a kind of happiness.
So you think that is happiness when like somebody like Medea goes through trauma and ends up committing the crime of infanticide. How do you think she could ever be happy or she could ever be fulfilled?
That's a really tough one, and it raises important questions about the human capacity for both great evil and a desperate search for happiness. In situations of extreme trauma, our brains can rewire in ways we don't fully understand. It's possible that even in the darkest moments, a person might cling to the smallest feelings of joy or connection as a way to cope. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about regarding happiness?
Yes, I would like you to give me more examples from literature and this time make them relevant. You know, when, give me relevant examples of when people find happiness in adversity.
All right, let's look at some examples where characters find a way to be happy, or at least find some peace, despite facing terrible things. One example is the novel Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Frankl was a Holocaust survivor who found a way to find purpose and even moments of joy in the midst of the concentration camps. He focused on helping others and finding meaning in the struggle. Would you like me to tell you about another example?
Yes, please. Give me another example.
All right, here's another one. In Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, Scout Finch learns some really tough lessons about prejudice and injustice. But throughout the novel, she also discovers the power of empathy, courage, and the enduring bond of family. Even in the face of the town's ugliness, she's able to find moments of joy and connection.
I don't understand which joy and connection does she find. It's only
Scout finds joy and connect. It's only 5:46 p.m., so you've got plenty of time left in the day. Do you want to switch gears and talk about something else? Or do you want to keep exploring this happiness thing?
Yes, I'd like you to talk to me about Harper Lee's novel and how the protagonist finds happiness in that.
Absolutely. Scout finds happiness in the midst of some pretty tough stuff. Even though the trial is really upsetting and the town's prejudice is heartbreaking, she still finds joy in the simple things. Like you mentioned, her relationship with her dad is really special. He's always there for her, and he teaches her so much about being a good person. That kind of love and support gives her a really strong foundation, even when things are chaotic.
All right, I can see what you mean. I can see. Okay, give me one more example.
All right, how about this? Scout also finds happiness in the simple things in life. She loves exploring the woods, and just being a kid. Even with all the heavy stuff going on, she still manages to find joy in those small moments. Would you like to hear about another book?
Hmm. All right, I want to wind up our interview. How would you sum up all of this, all of our discussion, and how would you wrap it all up for our listeners and viewers?
We've learned that happiness isn't always about big achievements or constant pleasure. Sometimes it's found in the little moments, in building strong relationships, and even in facing adversity with resilience. And remember, happiness is personal. What makes one person happy might be totally different for someone else. The important thing is finding what brings joy and meaning to your own life.
All right. Thank you very much, Gemini. It was a very good first interview, but I'm sure I will conduct another one very soon. Thank you.
You're welcome.